I'm Justin Davis, and this is Drone Camps RC. Hey guys, welcome back to my shop. I'm Justin Davis from Drone Camps RC. Today we have something new from Emax. It's the Hawk 5. It's been out for a little bit. Other reviewers have already done some reviews on it, and I was on vacation. I took this one with me, but what's special about this one is if you're new to FPV Racer, you're just getting your first quadcopter, this is a lot of power for something that comes right out of the box on 4S. And it'll get you over 100 miles an hour in my speed test. So this is a pretty amazingly powerful and fast, super lightweight frame. It's also coming in at 277 grams without the battery. So very lightweight X frame and really super narrow arms that are replaceable. You can get parts from EmaxUSA.com, but let's go ahead now. Let's take this one outside. I'll show you some of my flight footage. Then we'll come back in my shop and I'll give you some pros and cons and some real world experience and some opinions right here on the bench. Here we go.
That's the way you do it. You play the guitar on the MTV. That ain't working. That's the way you do it. Money for nothing and your chicks for free. Now that ain't working. That's the way you do it. Let me tell you, them guys ain't dumb. Maybe get a blister on your little finger. Maybe get a blister on your. That's the way you do it. You play the guitar on the MTV. That ain't working. That's the way you do it. Money for nothing and your chicks for free. Money for nothing. Chicks for free. So what's that? Chicks for free. Look at that, look at that.
Okay guys, we're back in the studio now, and thanks for watching that quick flight test of the Hawk 5. Now, the Hawk 5 is the first 5-inch of 2018 for Emax, and this is great because This has been developed by a group of guys at Emax who actually do fly, unlike some of the other Chinese companies out there just producing quads one after another after another. You've seen them come out. You've seen me review them. Some are flops and some are good, some are bad. So right away out of the box, this Betaflight tune on here, it was already tuned and it had already been hooked up with a USB cable to Betaflight, and I see that there was some data on the board when I got it. So it was tested by Emax before it was sent out. So that's super great. Now, the next big thing is that you can hit speeds of over 100 miles an hour with this drone with a 4S 1300 battery right out of the box on your power boost. This power system is pretty amazing on here, and this is the kind of quad, it's following a lot of trends that a lot of people like and want right now, and this is in the FPV community. So if you're brand new to FPV or you're just getting into FPV or you're thinking about buying a race drone, this already has some of the pro racer trends sort of built right into this model, mainly because it was built by pro racers, some of the guys that I know. So it's a very, very well designed and thought out quadcopter. With that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and break this down for you guys. We're going to take a little closer look at the frame. We're gonna look at the power system, the camera, and the flight controller on here. We're gonna talk about the VTX, and we're gonna talk about the accessories that come along with it. And we're gonna talk about, just discuss some of the things that I think are maybe some cons about this frame, because hey, nothing is perfect in the FPV world, and companies do make mistakes, but these mistakes are pretty minimal that you're going to see coming up, so not a very big deal. But let's go ahead first and we'll get started talking about the motors included with the Hawk 5. Now the motors on here, I've actually been running these for the past 6 months, maybe 6 months, but I've running these 2206 motors from Emax forever, since they were prototypes, and I've tested them on various different frames. I've even tested them on sort of longer range style frames, and they perform pretty well. I do like them. They are the light spec motors, and they are the 2206. They are the 2300 kV motors on this frame, and they only have 3 screws on the bottom. They're not rocking 4 screws because they wanted to shave off a little bit of weight and make this quad just a little more efficient. 4 extra bolts have been eliminated from this design. And this is an example of the bottom of the frame on the arm, and you're looking at those 3 bolts there, and they shave the 4th one at the top off, and that does save a couple grams, especially if you do that 4 times on each arm. So it just saves a little bit more weight off of it, and the whole point of this frame is to be super light. As you can see how narrow those arms there are, all the way through there to the very end of the motor. And very nice that they did put 2 motor bumpers on here, and each motor does come with the right hardware on the bottom, and they actually give you some extra hardware in the box, which is also really nice. And they have these nice anodized red aluminum nuts that go on the top, and those are nice self-locking nuts, so they're not going to come off. No bullet nuts on there because Emax really knows the race community. Now let's go ahead and talk about this frame. When I first got the email about the Hawk 5 from Emax, maybe in the late winter in 2017, they were designing this, and I can tell this was designed by pilots. The first image that I saw of this, I thought it looked really aggressive. It was a super light and super speedy looking frame. It has that 4-bolt trendy pattern on the top, so you can remove the top plate really easily and get to the stack. A lot of racers don't have a lot of time, and they want to get to a stack to change out something if they have to during the course of a race day. If you're racing for multi-GP, you don't have a lot of time to make repairs. So it was very nice that they did that 4-bolt on the top trend. Also, some other trends on here: very narrow arms, super narrow arms, really thick 4mm arms, very nice. 2 motor bumpers on the outside here, and they did have some heat shrink around the wires already. So one thing I'm going to note about that is you're going to have to put some tape around those anyway, because during my flying that heat shrink loosened up and it started moving back and forth on this arm. So you want to keep that nice and secure by putting some tape there. Now, one other trend about this frame is that there is a flat top on the frame, and that allows you to put a battery on top or on the bottom. So I like to have the battery riding on the bottom, and there's plenty of space in here just to get a strap through there. And on the top, it does have 2 detachable plates right here. So if you wanted to take these off, put a strap down, and then put these 2 plates back on, you can have a battery riding on top. So whichever way you prefer there is going to be an option for you. And also I wanted you guys to see this. If you look at the very top of the quad, they put a hole right through the top of the plate right there. So guys that are racing or you're flying with friends, if you're changing channels on the side of this VTX, you can see what channel and band you're on right straight through this hole. So they did think about that, and they didn't hide the VTX totally from your line of sight, which is super, super nice. Now, one thing about this VTX is that it doesn't have a smart audio on there, like I said before, but I can live without that. And mine came with this dipole whip antenna off the back, and if you got this one and it was hooked up like mine is right here, I would suggest taking a zip tie and maybe coming off the back right here and making it stand straight up instead of out the back like this, because mine did get chewed up, as you can see right there. So if you zip tie this, make sure you do it up and not out like this. And if you look in the very back here, they stuck a capacitor back here. It's sort of tucked it in underneath this part of the frame, and that's nicely hidden away from any of the exterior part of the frame, which is super nice. It doesn't stick out at all, and I didn't have any problem with bumping that during crashes. Now, while I'm not a huge fan of dipoles, they do give you the option in the box. They give you an extra SMA connector in here. If you want to add a traditional style pagoda antenna on there, they do also give you 2 pagoda antennas in the box as well. One for your goggles and one for the quadcopter itself. Now, one bummer about this, maybe a con, would be that it was a left-hand circular polarized antenna versus a right-hand circular polarized antenna. I usually run right-hand circular polarized, so keep that in mind, that this is a left hand. The way you look at that is on the very bottom of it. It will say LHCP on there. So new guys, pay attention to that. You don't want to mix up right hand and left hand polarized antennas on your goggles or your quad. And also in the box, guys, you get a Fox-ear camera controller, and this is great because there is a wire coming off the back of this, and you can go into the OSD on the camera and you can change around things on the screen, or if you want to do it inside Betaflight, either way you want to do it. This is nice for on the fly adjustments out in the field for brightness, darkness, and contrast and color ratio. So if you have a cloudy day, you can pick a sort of a different brightness and contrast setup for that particular day. And also in the box, which I haven't seen a lot before lately, an extra arm in the box. This is great. So any side that you break an arm, you already have an extra arm in the box. You don't have to buy an extra set to get yourself back flying. And this is a really nice trend that I would like to see other companies follow. So frame makers, take note. This is definitely what racers want, is an extra arm in the kits that you guys provide. And also in the box, you get 2 sets of AVAN flow props, and these are the new hot props from Emax. And hot, maybe they do have a lot of throttle draw and amp draw when you do power up at full throttle, but at mid throttle and low throttle, they really are quiet and smooth. So that's mainly due to this characteristic on this prop, with the wide cord in the center right here, and actually a really aggressively narrow tapered end right here. It's a little more narrow than something else like you'd see for the Azure Power freestyle props right here. So a lot thinner on the end than some of the other more popular props out there, like the Cyclones and the Dow props. So keep that in mind, but definitely check out some Azure props. These are also super smooth on this frame. If you guys want to, I'll put the link down below for those and these props. You can try both of those and see which ones you like the best. Now this quad comes several different ways. It does come PNP and BNF, which is bind and fly. Bind and fly is going to have your receiver on there. So if you're looking for a receiver, if you're a FrSky guy, you're probably going to get the XM Plus, and it's already mounted up to this Magnum flight controller stack in here. This is great. This is the Magnum F4, and it also has a beeper right behind the receiver right there. The receiver bind button is a little gold button right there. Might be able to zoom in and show some of you new guys right there. You'll see it right here underneath this wire. If I move that a little bit for you, you can see there's a little gold tab. That's it right there. That's where you're going to bind that up to your Frsky TARANIS radio. Also, they just have these antennas sort of loosely hanging out the top of these 2 holes right here, and I would take 2 little pieces of heat shrink and a couple zip ties and go ahead and stand those up off the top of the quad. You don't want those getting chewed up by flopping down into these props, because the props are close enough that they will chew your antennas right off. Now, some of you guys know that I'm a huge fan of HGLRC flight controllers as well, and they are making some really cool high-powered little 20 by 20 millimeter stacks that we're seeing a lot of brushless micros. If you watch my channel, you've probably seen tons of those reviews already. And some of the frames that I've had recently, including a frame from Torque FPV, they just released a dual flight controller mounting version. And this is also one of those frames. It does look like there are two types of options for flight controller mounting on this frame. So we have this 30.5 by 30.5 mounting holes right here. You can see those 4 bolts right there. And in the very middle right there, there's 4 smaller holes right there, same size diameter holes, but it looks like we can fit a 20 by 20 stack in there. So following the trend, having a 5-inch quad frame with the smaller micro arrow on here with a 20 millimeter by 20 millimeter flight controller ESC combo, this would shave a ton of weight off if you got rid of this and went a little bit smaller and you had sort of brushless micro brushless components on this. That would also be pretty amazing and give you a super lightweight quad. And the stack that I'm going to recommend for that is the HGLRC F440, and I believe they just released the F460, so I'm not sure that the F460 is actually 20 by 20, it might be 30, but if you wanted to go even higher with this frame and run this on 6S, that F460 would do that all day long. Now, myself and some other reviewers, we did get the early version of this quadcopter, and I did notice right away that this camera does stick out in the front right here. You can see this. Just going to zoom in a little bit closer for you guys. This frame is sort of lacking some protection around the edge of that, and one of the reviewers, other guys out there, already said that he mentioned it to them, and they did make the new frames, the production versions of this, sort of come out a little further around that camera. So no harm done to your field of view. It's not going to be in the way. It's just going to give you a little more protection from frontal crashes, and that's super important because I've broke a ton of these little micro cams. So I'm going to go ahead and summarize and give you my final opinions on the Emax Hawk 5. Well, I gotta say, Emax, great job, 2 thumbs up on this. This is definitely not your daddy's Nighthawk. This is the Hawk 5, and it is way better than the 2014, 15, and 16 versions of the Nighthawk. This has just come full circle. They've done a lot of renditions and changes. This is a complete departure from the original Nighthawks that a lot of guys were flying just starting out. It was sort of a China beginner, low quality in the early days. No offense there, Emax, but a lot of guys were getting them for pretty cheap, but the components went out a lot on them. But then they came around with the red bottoms. Some of you guys remember the Emax 2205 red bottoms. Kind of changed the game in the last couple years. So now we've progressed to the 2206 light spec motors that a lot of people love, and also the white belt motors, the even nicer sort of more heavy duty motors, but these are the light version of those. So Emax has really done a lot of homework in the FPV community, and they've listened to a lot of people, and that's kind of what you want in a quadcopter manufacturer. They do listen, they do take notes, and they are progressing from design to design, especially with the Babyhawk-r 2-inch edition and the 3-inch edition. So I think if you're looking for a quad that you just want to pull out of the box, bind up with your radio, and have a really nice factory tune on it, this is definitely that one. I think the retail is around $230 to $250 right now. I'll try to put some links down below to Emax's website and some other top quads right now, but you're going to have a good time with this one. It's extremely fast. It's 4S ready. I really wouldn't fly at 5 and 6S. I think you're probably going to be pushing that F4 Magnum stack in there. So keep it to 4S, 1300 and 1500. It's going to fly a little bit heavy with a GoPro mount on top, as some other people said. And generally, I don't really like to fly with GoPros on there. I think it just adds extra weight and it changes the whole characteristic. And sometimes a lot of extra weight, you need to do a different PID tune. You're going to get vibrations. And right now, out of the box, this quad doesn't have it. So fly it exactly like you see it here. I think you'll have a good time with it. You won't see a lot of vibrations or prop wash coming out of those big loops. So definitely a winner from me, and I'm going to give it a thumbs up. So I want to say congratulations to Emax for producing a really nice quad again. I think they're setting a new standard in the 5-inch market for bind and flies with this quad. They had a big hit with the Babyhawk-r, and now I think they're going to have the same with the Hawk 5. So thanks again for watching my review. This is Justin Davis. Be good and help some other guys out there on the field. See you on the next one.